What's up guys? The UFC fight card headlined by Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev. Not much to say about the quality, but there are 10 total fights on the card. The main card starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. I think it has good matchmaking. There are actually good matchups compared to the quality of the names, right? There's not a lot of name value on the card, but the fight should be fun. 6 fights got canceled or changed. It was originally supposed to be Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape, and Asu Almabayev was supposed to fight Steve Erceg. With those 2 fights, the card looked a lot better. But the prospect of the night, there's a few decent ones, but I think Esteban Ribovics, especially after his performance against Daniel Zellhuber, has to be the prospect of the card. He pulled off that split decision win and was one of the greatest fights in UFC history. Before that, had an amazing knockout against Terrence McKinney on a 3-fight win streak and only getting better with every fight. And he has an interesting matchup with Nasrat Haqparast, who he himself is also on a win streak, 4 fights in a row, although the Jared Gordon fight was extremely close. The fighter of the night is of course Manel Kape. He is by far the biggest fighter on the card. He is the highest ranked fighter and the closest to a title shot. The stake of the night, I don't know if it's either Julian Marquez or Andrew Ali. Julian Marquez got knocked out in his last 3 fights, all in the first or second rounds. His last one a 22nd knockout loss, and they're all brutal, like vicious knockouts. But Andrew Ali has 5 losses in a row. Some of those fights were close, they were all decisions, but she also lost 8 fights in her last 10, so it's one or the other. The banger of the night, I'm thinking either Cody Brundage versus Julian Marquez or Nasrat Haqparast versus Esteban Ribovics. But maybe Haqparast versus Ribovics if Haqparast actually exchanges in the stand-up, but should be a good fight. I was gonna say the heavyweight fight as well between Austin Lane and Mario Pinto, but I'm more interested in the Haqparast and Ribovics fight. And then the fight of the night is of course the main event between 2 of the best fighters on the entire card, Manel Kape and Asu Almabayev. High-level fighters, striker versus grappler matchup, kind of, even though both can do a decent amount of everything, I guess. You know, Almabayev can strike, Kape can grapple. Should be a great fight. And then we go to Charles Johnson versus Ramazan Temurov. It really makes no sense that Charles Johnson is fighting someone like Temurov. He is a ranked fighter in the flyweight division, and he's fighting someone who's making his 2nd UFC fight. Yes, Temurov is very dangerous with his striking. He has a lot of punching power. He's like the Uzbekistan version of John Lineker, and he can win the fight. In fact, he's the favorite going into the fight. But Charles Johnson is on a 4-fight win streak. He beat Joshua Van and Sumar Darji. He absolutely should be fighting someone ranked. I don't know if the UFC doesn't like him or what, but I do think Charles Johnson should win the fight though. He is the more technical striker. He's much longer. He's not as reckless. Temurov will literally just throw haymakers and knock his opponent out. I mean, he throws that right hand like he's pitching a baseball. It's insane, especially for a flyweight to hit as hard as he does. He has 11 knockouts out of 18 wins. His last 5 fights have ended by knockout in the first round. If he lands one of those haymakers on Johnson, the fight's over. Johnson has to be perfect for 15 minutes or to the point where he can knock out Temurov. I think Charles Johnson should be able to counter as Temurov is chasing for the knockout because Johnson is so much more technical in the stand-up. But if Temurov lands with that fast pitch to the face, that fight's over. I'm going with Charles Johnson by a 3rd round TKO. And then we go to Andrew Ali versus JJ Aldrich. I'm going JJ Aldrich. Andrew Ali is just not the same fighter. At one point, she was actually decent. Both fighters are well-rounded. Andrew Ali might be the overall better grappler, maybe, but Aldrich, I think, is the better striker of the 2 and mixes up the striking and grappling slightly better, but it should be a competitive fight regardless. There's not like too much advantages that one fighter has over the other, but I do think that Aldrich is just overall the better fighter. So JJ Aldrich by a decision. And then Lucas Almeida versus Danny Silva. Lucas Almeida is coming off 1 win. He's 1-2 in his last 3 fights, whereas Danny Silva is on a 3-fight win streak. His only loss was 4 fights ago, and a majority decision too, so it's not like he's gotten dominated in any of his fights. Whereas Lucas Almeida, his only 2 losses in the UFC have both been finishes. This is a striker versus MMA fighter, I guess, kind of matchup where even though Lucas Almeida can wrestle, he can grapple, he mostly kickboxes, and he's very basic with a lot of strikes that he throws. His offense and defense is nothing unique, I would say. He throws a good right straight, good high kicks, keeps his hands up, very fundamental with everything. Whereas Danny Silva mixes up the game a lot better, where his striking is not as good as Almeida's. If he keeps it standing, he will get outstruck. He has his hands low, he boxes for the most part, doesn't throw a lot of kicks, and tries to stay in close range. But I do think ultimately Almeida is just a better striker. The thing though is Silva will wrestle, just like he did against Kulibao. He got 4 takedowns against Kulibao, wrestled well against the fence, even struck with him for a lot of that fight as well. So I do think with the advantage of mixing up the striking and wrestling, Danny Silva should win by a decision, but it should be a close fight. Then we go to Ricardo Ramos versus Chepe Mariscal. Hamilsh is coming off one win against Joshua Culibao, split decision win, but before that lost twice in a row by guillotine in the first round to both fighters. Charles Jourdain and Julian Erosa both submitted him. Mariscal is on a 7-fight win streak. Although a lot of people thought he lost to Morgan Charrier, I think he should win this fight. Both fighters are good grapplers. Hamilsh especially is very dangerous submissions, but suboptimal striking defense. I think Mariscal should be able to knock him out in the stand-up or beat him for 3 rounds by stopping all the takedowns, outstriking him, but I do think he should be able to get the knockout either in the first or second rounds. He's much more well-rounded, he's more powerful, he's very aggressive with the stand-up. Hamilsh doesn't move his head well, he doesn't pick up his hands, he doesn't check kicks. His defense in the striking is almost non-existent. He doesn't really defend strikes. I'm gonna go with Mariscal by a second round knockout. But if he wants to take the fight to the ground, he is a good grappler, but he does give Hamilsh a chance of winning. So it's gonna come down to how good is his fight IQ. And then we go to the heavyweight division between Austin and Mario Pinto. This fight's gonna be a slaughter. Mario's gonna run right through Austin like you're cutting butter with a miter saw. Mario Pinto hits so hard and has good footwork on the back foot, taking off angles to line up the right straight. Austin Lane is just athletic. He doesn't really have much skill. Mario is faster, he hits harder, he has good combinations, has decent head movement, good footwork. I'm going with Mario by a first round knockout. And then we're going to Danny Barlow versus Sam Patterson. A striker versus grappler matchup. If Sam Patterson stands up with Danny Barlow, he will get annihilated. Danny Barlow hits very hard with the left hand. He's a lot more technical in the stand-up. Sam Patterson doesn't move his head that much. He usually stands up very tall, shoulders low, chin up high. Sometimes hands are low too. And the speed that Barlow is able to fire out that left straight, he couldn't knock Sam Patterson out. Sam Patterson needs to get the fight to the ground, but Danny Barlow did defend takedowns against Veretennikov. He's able to land the left hand, moving forward, moving backwards, just like he did against Josh Quinlan. On the back foot, dropped him with the left hand, knocked opponents out, moving forward with the left hand. He's very, very versatile with that left hand of his. His nickname is literally left hand to God. That is, in fact, his nickname. And Sam Patterson's getting knocked out. I'm going first round, Danny Barlow, KO Sam Patterson. If he's getting knocked out by Yanal Ashmos, he's getting absolutely destroyed by Danny Barlow. Yanal Ashmos is a lightweight and not even a big lightweight at that. And he doesn't hit as hard as Danny Barlow does. And he's not even as good of a striker as Danny Barlow is. He also has a reach advantage over Sam Patterson, which is the usual advantage he has over his opponents if he is at a striking disadvantage. He doesn't even have that against Danny Barlow. He needs to take the fight to the ground or he will get colded by that left hand. If Yanal Ashmos can knock out Sam Patterson, a lightweight, and not even a big lightweight at that, Danny Barlow should as well. There's absolutely nothing Yanal Ashmos does better than Danny Barlow. He doesn't hit as hard, he's not nearly as big, he's not as technical in the stand-up. I think Danny Barlow makes this fight look easy. And then we have William Gomes versus Haider Emil. A good striking match, complete opposites in their fighting styles. William Gomes will throw jabs and kicks from range and try to just win on the scorecard sometimes, whereas Haider Emil goes for the knockout in every fight, gets in his opponent's face and just throws bombs until they fall. So this is all going to come down to how good are the two fighters' footwork, because Gomes is going to be moving around the octagon. Haider Emil is going to have to cut him off. If he can't cut him off, he's going to get picked apart at range for the entire fight. He's also very defensively reckless. William Gomes will land a head kick or a counter punch as Emil is moving forward, and he could knock him out with one of those shots. But if Haider Emil is able to get in close, cuts off the cage, starts throwing bombs at Gomes, he could get the knockout. But the thing is, William Gomes will clinch up to reverse the opponent on the fence, create enough space behind him so he can move around again, and he'll rinse and repeat that throughout the fight. So I do think William Gomes has the advantage in the fight. He's the better striker of the two. He's a longer fighter. I'm going with William Gomes by a decision. And then we're going to Nasrat Haqparast versus Esteban Ribovics. Both fighters are on a win streak. Nasrat is on a 4-fight win streak. Esteban is on a 3-fight win streak. And you have to just imagine that Esteban is at an all-time high mentally right now. He just won the fight of the year for 2024, and he was the winner of that fight. One of the biggest cards of the year in the sphere, and he always gets better. So he might have the mental advantage going into this fight just because of all that momentum. And I am picking him to win the fight. I think he's the better striker. Nasrat can be very obvious with his offense. He tries to line up the left hand, throws a right hook into left straights, right hook into left overhands, very similar to Kelvin Gastelum, and that kind of style is just very hard to be effective with it against some of the best fighters in the weight class. I think Ribovics has the talent and skill to be a top 10 fighter. He's very technical, a lot more versatile in the stand-up, a lot more variety with his strikes, and I think he should be able to get in and out of the left hand. And as we've seen against Zellhuber, if the fight turns into a war, Ribovics is beyond comfortable to win at that as well. So I think he's technically better. If the fight goes to a war, he's better at that than Nasrat is as well. So I'm gonna go with Esteban Ribovics by a 3rd round TKO. And then we go to the co-main event. Cody Brundage versus Julian Marquez. I don't know how this is the co-main event over Nasrat versus Esteban, but it should be a decent fight. Both guys go for the finish. Cody Brundage is a decent wrestler, whereas Julian Marquez tries to take your head off with every strike he could throw. Cody Brundage takes him to the ground and finishes him with the ground and pound. But there's some MMA math that can happen here. Cody Brundage and Julian Marquez both fought Zach Reese. Cody Brundage easily knocked him out out, slamming him in the first round. Zach Reese easily knocked out Julian Marquez with an uppercut in the first round. That must mean that Julian Marquez knocks out Cody Brundage in the first round. That's always how MMA math works, and the exact opposite it's supposed to. Whenever there's 3 mutual fighters, they all have to beat each other in like a rock, paper, scissors dynamic. But I do think Cody Brundage should win the fight. And then we go to the main event, Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev. Asu Almabayev is on a 17 fight win streak, and he's taking the fight on short notice. He was supposed to fight Steve Erceg on this card, and Manel Kape was supposed to fight Brandon Royval. And now they both got matched up. Almabayev was in a 3-round fight preparation. I don't know if he's going to be ready for 5 rounds. He's never been 5 rounds in his entire career, but neither has Manel Kape. I do think still Manel Kape should have the advantage because he's been training for 5 rounds, whereas Almabayev hasn't. Almabayev is the more well-rounded fighter because he has the wrestling aspect of his game, whereas Manel Kape is mostly a striker. He can wrestle, but he likes to keep it standing, and I do think he has a striking advantage here. And Almabayev likes to fight in a very, very slow-paced fight. Manel Kape is very comfortable at that pace, and I think it would actually give him a lot more control on picking it up or slowing it down. Almabayev doesn't land a lot of significant strikes. The most he's ever landed in a single fight is 44, which is actually very low, especially for a flyweight. 44 significant strikes is his overall best. Manel Kape landed 111 in his last fight alone. He landed 112 against Felipe dos Santos. He needs to go forward and pick up the pace when Almabayev is fighting slow, because he'll move in and out, look for the left hand, sometimes throw power punches, spinning kicks to the body. Manel Kape has a lot of room there to pressure Almabayev to the fence. Through all combinations, Almabayev is going to counter with takedowns. That is the kind of fight that he could win against, but we don't know if he's going to fight that way, because there are times Manel Kape looks like he could be the champion. The way he fought Bruno Silva and Felipe dos Santos was insane. Like amazing performances. He looked like a world champion out there fighting. But then you see him fight Mohamed Mokaev. You see him fight Matthias Nicolau and Alexander Pantoja, and it's just not the same guy. If Manel Kape can keep that performance going and look that good against Almabayev, then we have a real title challenger here. And I think he will. I am picking him to win by a decision. So I'm going with Manel Kape by a 5th round TKO. But he is a favorite, a -220 against a +180 Asu Almabayev. I agree with those odds. I think Manel Kape should win. Julian Marquez is a slight favorite against Cody Brundage. That's interesting. I'm going with the underdog, although it should be a close fight. Esteban Ribovics is a decent favorite against Nasrat Haqparast, almost a 3-1 favorite actually. A -275 against a +225. I think he should be a bigger favorite than that, but decent enough. William Gomes a -195 against a +165. Hyder Emil. I agree with that. I think William Gomes should win. Danny Barlow -310 against a +250 Sam Patterson. I guess, but I think he should be a bigger favorite than that. So I am confident in him and Esteban Ribovics in winning their fights. Mario Pinto is a -550 favorite against a +410 Austin Lane. I agree with that. Shepe Mariscal is a -410 against a +320 Hikaru Hamosh. I agree with that as well. Danny Silva is a -225 favorite against a +185 Lucas Almeida. I think the betting line should be a lot closer than that, but I agree Danny Silva should win. Not a fight I would bet on though. JJ Aldridge a -205 against a +170 Andrew Lee. I agree with that. Charles Johnson a -125 against a +105 Ramazan Temirov. I agree with that. These are very good betting lines. The lines are very close. Both fighters could win. Charles Johnson has the technical ability. He's fought ranked fighters before. This is only Temirov's 2nd UFC fight, but he's a big knockout artist, so this could be a really good pick here, depending on who you go with. And those are my picks for the UFC card headlined by Manel Kape versus Asu Almabayev. Should be a good one. I think there's going to be some good performances, some good knockouts. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to give it a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications.